Well, we're now joined by BC's Minister for Transport and Infrastructure, Rob Fleming. Minister, thank you for joining us.
Pleasure to be here, Michael.
Listen, there doesn't seem to be a lot of details coming out of these meetings that you and your colleagues have had with federal officials. So I'm wondering if there are any positives that you can point to right now as to this get-together. Was it fruitful?
I think so. I mean, there's some ongoing discussions here. It's several ministers from our government in British Columbia, Premier Eby heading the mission out here. Obviously, public safety is an issue in British Columbia and right across the country. So hearing about bail reform and the legislation that's moving through the Parliament here is important for our Attorney General, Nikki Sharma.
Other New Democrat.
Yes. And also the wildfire season, the worst in a century. Our tourism minister, Lana Popham, is here talking about business relief. It was a very tough summer for businesses that struggled through the pandemic and through the wildfire season. I'm here to talk about infrastructure priorities. There's a national discussion going on, especially after port disruptions this summer and again going back to the pandemic. The supply chain became the operational watchword for Canada. We experienced a lot of shortages. You know, trade happens in Canada because of British Columbia. We have the #1 and the #3 port now in Prince Rupert. So, you know, the volume of Canadian exports, commodities moving to markets around the world as well as coming into the Canadian economy hugely relies on BC. So we have a number of infrastructure projects that we wanted to talk about. And like other major cities and provinces in the country, public transit, looking at how we make changes as we account for a low-carbon world as we move forward is really important to build that kind of infrastructure. Housing, of course, was top of mind. For all of us here on the mission, Premier Eby in particular, he's leading a national discussion. We've heard many good things and some good new initiatives from the federal government. Taking the HST off rental housing is going to be helpful, but we need to do a lot more and a lot more quickly.
Okay, let's break that up now, though, because, you know, I'm also wondering, have there been any agreements in principle, or at least in the long distance that you can point to say that we believe as a result of these meetings we're going to get A, B, C, D, and E within the next 6 months?
Well, we're certainly hoping and have been encouraged to patiently wait for the fall economic outlook for some commitments that have been made already to come good. I think of a major infrastructure project like the Massey Tunnel replacement, and BC is no different than other provinces. We have old, outdated infrastructure that's critical. We probably have one of the worst congested spots on Highway 99. It's how trade gets to the US border. It's how YVR's International Airport functions. It's how people get around the region. And it needs replacing, and it needs to be 21st century. It has to have rapid transit technology. So that project is well known to the government, and I feel like getting close to a solid commitment there. We also want to explore, and there are some mayors here from Metro Vancouver, how we can be certain of some of the investments that have already been announced by the federal government. Things like the Permanent Transit Fund. You know, can we have shovel-ready projects pre-approved for when that money starts to flow in 2026? Those are some key discussions we had. On the housing side, look, everybody needs to play a role. Municipal leaders, the province has stepped up. We're certainly investing in housing. We have a $7 billion 10-year plan. We've had the most housing starts in the province's history this year, and we still need to do more. So the federal government has talked about making land and other assets available to expedite housing. They've announced their accelerator. Municipal leaders are eager to see how that works and to sign up for that.
Yeah. Well, you know, we were talking about it before we started the interview. And I used to live in Vancouver. Housing has always been an issue in Vancouver. Affordable housing has always been an issue in Vancouver. So when you hear the federal government talk of priorities like housing, and really that's been their focus since Parliament has come back, and throughout the summer continue to talk about environmental investments in this country, are those two clear areas where you see a dovetailing of interest that you think there might be some quick movement on?
I think so. I mean, what we've heard from the federal government is they take a bit of inspiration from BC because their province has moved quicker and in a bigger way on providing housing solutions. We're happy to share those ideas with anyone in the country, but we also have some additional ideas, and the partnership is key with the federal government. So certainly they're aware of the most pressing of Canadian needs, which is more housing options, more affordable housing, Interest rates are a concern for people, but so are rents. That's somewhat connected, but it's about supply as well. And we are thinking about it differently as well. And as the transportation minister, one of the points I pressed is that we have the largest SkyTrain expansion in 40 years in Metro Vancouver, for example. We're taking transportation investments and aligning housing investments with them. So the idea of transit-oriented development, which we have put significant funds towards acquiring land so that we can control the prices of construction costs, which are rising. But if land is secured, that's the biggest driver of cost that takes away the affordability that Canadians and British Columbians are looking for. We'd like the federal government to be right there alongside us as we make those kinds of decisions.
Yeah, quickly losing time, but I do want to pick up on that point because we heard Premier Eby say while in Ottawa that these projects are going to go ahead with or without Ottawa, but we want Ottawa. Why do you want Ottawa at the table?
Well, it's a national problem, but British Columbia obviously is a huge receiver of immigration. We have growth pressures. We have infrastructure needs that hold back housing expansion. Because the utilities and the underground systems that are needed to be upgraded for housing construction are lagging behind, and the federal government has played a role historically and recently in a number of communities. And now is not the time to slow down, but accelerate on housing. And the federal government has put that challenge out there. We're meeting it, and we're urging them to move quickly as we are in British Columbia.
Mr. Rob Fleming, thank you very much for the time today.
Thanks for having me.